It has been a whirlwind of emotions over the weekend. The Arizona Cardinals, what we learned about their quarterback, Kyler Murray. The Phoenix Suns potentially have a new asset headed towards the Valley, and much, much more on this edition of the Ben Garcia Show.
The Ben Garcia Show. Yeah. Best show in the land. Yup. Listen. Come and get your information from Ben Garcia. Get the latest on your quarterback, running backs, and receivers. Tune in, so any other show you don't need him. Any news that he giving out, please just believe him. Giving out the latest prediction and top-notch analysis. Wanna hear the truth? Better have thick skin like callus. The latest move that your team just made can be damaging. The dudes ain't speaking no facts, they just be rambling. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show. Go get the cameraman. Yeah. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show. Go get the cameraman. The Ben Garcia Show.
What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. 6 a.m. on a Monday morning, the new start time for the Ben Garcia Show. Circumstances have changed a bit, and I kind of figured that I want this show to be able to connect with people getting ready for work, starting their work day, and being able to start that off with the very first ideas or whatever it is going on in the Arizona sports landscape. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me this morning. We'll go 30, 35 minutes, and, as we usually do here, cover a few topics. But either way, it's kind of interesting, right? Since I switched my content over to the local side of all things Arizona sports, it's kind of hard not to lead the show off with playoff football. And I thought about it, but I think last night, once again, was a good reminder of what the Phoenix Suns, which have not had a real legitimate signature win in like over 2 months. Last night I thought was the Suns' best win in 2 months. And I understand that there's this idea that the Suns team, the Charlotte Hornets, it's nothing to exactly write home about, right? But you got to be fair. I thought that was a good win last night, a really good win. This Suns team hasn't had a comeback win like that since 2 months ago against the Dallas Mavericks, a game in which you kind of got bailed out by some officiating, but you get it where you can. And with all the rumors surrounding Jusuf Nurkic's trade implications, and that's something that I myself have definitely dove into. But this change was so needed in the lineup. I don't mean to take a victory lap on my analysis of Bradley Beal should go to the bench. This isn't some analysis that I had, 2 weeks ago. I've had this for nearly a year. My brother texted me last night, and we texted our group chat, and he was basically saying, oh, so I guess Bradley Beal going to the bench was the answer. Yeah, it was pretty clear. This Suns team is completely rejuvenated with not having to have the ball stick in one player's hand. And, last night, coming back in that game, a game in which you call what it is, the Suns didn't necessarily play well. This is what Suns games have to look like, right? They have to be able to outscore teams. Now, I'm not so sure this particular formula. In fact, I'll go as far as to say it's not going to happen. But this Suns team, the ability to win games like this is exactly what they need to do. You got to outscore the opposing team by a ton. It's going to be not just double, but triple the firepower offensively. And then defensively, you got to be able to get timely stops. And that's exactly what happened last night. The Suns got timely stops, and then offensively were just too much to handle against the Charlotte Hornets team that nearly beat them twice in the same week and would have had 9 wins on the season. They would have had 2 of their 9 wins against the Phoenix Suns. So you went from a in case of emergency, break glass scenario where the Charlotte Hornets are beating this team to where a week ago I didn't have the belief that this Suns team could actually beat this team in terms of coming back to beat this team. Obviously, skill, talent, they're just better. But the Suns haven't shown the ability to beat a team like that in months. So to see that kind of rear its head again really helps amplify what this Suns team is. They got to be able to win games exactly like this. You got to score 120 points, 130 points, get timely stops. That's the identity of this team. And then we haven't really talked since Jusuf Nurkic has been thoroughly benched. Before it was just one game. And now it is Jusuf Nurkic has gone solely to the bench. And it's something that if you've been watching this show, again, I've been advocating for. I am loyal to the truth, not a sports take. And although I defended Jusuf Nurkic at the start of the year, and I still will into this aspect of I don't think the Suns are who their record says they are, because Jusuf Nurkic isn't in the lineup anymore. And I'm not going to go that far and say that. I think that's crazy. Jusuf Nurkic is a role player. Largely, the Suns have underperformed this year because their star players haven't performed up to standard. That's what it is. Devin Booker, outside of the last 2 games, has been a marginal to star player, and that's not consistent enough. He has to be an actual number 2. And Devin Booker, I got in some hot water over the weekend. Because if you want to really drive me crazy, run a fan account with your profile picture of that player and go after people personally when you're not an adult enough to put your own face to the name. It's something I don't go after people, period. People were coming after me because a Stan account posted Devin Booker's statistics, and it had basically said, oh, washed, not an all-star. Like, first off, no one said Devin Booker was washed, but I understand. Fan accounts have to try to get their engagement somehow, but the argument of he should be an all-star just because we really like Devin Booker, he's not been an all-star. Career low from the field goal percentage, or I guess I should say career low in terms of field goal percentage, and a career low in terms of three-point field goal percentage. Those are two things that are that matter a ton to Devin Booker's game, especially defensively. He had not been the same player. And I got in a lot of trouble. A bunch of fan accounts came after me. I never go after anyone personally. Some of them were calling me. It was always the ones that said the craziest things that don't have a name or don't have a face to their name. But that's why. It's part of the reason why the Suns haven't been who they were supposed to be this year. Kevin Durant's been really good, especially for his age. Bradley Beal was a square peg in a round hole in the starting lineup. And Devin Booker hadn't been a number 2. And what have we seen over the past couple of weeks? Exactly what this Suns team needs to be. They need to embrace small ball. That means Royce O'Neal, Ryan Dunn, the big 3 in a closing lineup. Bradley Beal needs to come off the bench and stop worrying about being the playmaker and just go be the scorer. And Kevin Durant has to continue to be awesome. And Devin Booker has to be a consistent number 2 and get back to being the best number 2 in the NBA. That's what we need to see from this team. And this idea that just because you really like the Phoenix Suns, that's not exactly what they are, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me. So I thought last night was a potential turning point. On Friday we talked about a potential sign for things to come. If the Suns lost that game last night, we're going back to same old Phoenix Suns. I would have related it very closely to the Phoenix Suns, Charlotte Hornets. The Phoenix Suns losing to the San Antonio Spurs last year twice in like the span of a week. And it would have been the same thing here, losing twice to the Charlotte Hornets in the span of a week. It does show, at least for this team, there is a little bit of growth, even if it's not exponential. And if you're talking about a potential championship team, that's crazy. If you're talking about a potential team that is definitely going to be a playoff team, I can get to you there. But I think what you saw last night is exactly what the Suns needed to be. Outscore teams. That means scoring 120 points at the minimum. Embrace small ball. No more Yusuf Nurkic. He doesn't fit with this team. Bradley Beal going to the bench and overall cooking Bradley Beal off the bench, only worrying about scoring, not worrying about all this playmaking. Devin Booker's defense does need to take a step up, although it's been marginally better over the past couple of games. And he needs to continue to be what he was last year, which was the best second best player on a team. Meaning he has to be the best Robin in the NBA. And then Kevin Durant has to continue to be a supernova, superstar Kevin Durant. And that is exactly what this Suns team need if they're going to succeed. And another way the Suns team obviously needs to succeed. And I got in more trouble with this. I got in some hot water with this over the weekend because I tend to speak in definites. I don't mean to always do it, but when I talk about the Phoenix Suns or when I talk about whoever it is, right? I talk about any sport, any team, any player. I'm always going to speak in definites because I think sitting on a fence, I'm going to take a hard opinion on something, and I'm going to admit when I'm wrong. I'm going to write it out, but I'm not going to say, I don't know, the Suns might be able to do this. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. It's why I think I've grown the audience that I have right now. I don't think that, listen, there's 10 people in the chat with me this morning, which thankful for all of you. A year ago, I don't think I could get one person in this chat. I think people appreciate my honesty, even if at times it seems a little harsh. And there's a report out by John Gambadoro, who I think is the only person outside of Gerald Bourguet as well, who you should trust with sourcing. It's not going after anyone in particular. There has been a long track record of John Gambadoro's, regardless of how some people feel about him, who I think is a extraordinary reporter. He's hardly ever wrong. Gambo basically came out and said, hey, the Suns are in really early talks about a trade for Nick Richards. And I got in a lot of trouble because I had said, Gambo reporting this, basically is what I tweeted, and you can follow me on all social media platforms at Ben Garcia Show, is, Gambo tweeted this, so that must mean, I'm assuming, they're likely done with the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes. And I had everyone come after me. And honestly, sometimes I have an opinion, and I have to do a double take of that opinion, because I say to myself, I'm like, wait a second, where is anyone seeing anything different here? But the Phoenix Suns going after Nick Richards as is, right? With no other picks, with no other whatever, unless they swing a deal for Tyus Jones, unless they swing a deal for Monte Morris and bring in more assets, and that might be the case, Grayson Allen, who I think doesn't have as much trade value as some Suns fans think, I would be surprised if the Suns got Nick Richards and Jimmy Butler. Guys, it's a simple game of dollars and cents at this point. I like Nick Richards potentially on this Phoenix Suns team. King Nacho joining us. He's a loyal listener of Locked On Phoenix Suns, who for some reason everyone thinks is my burner account, which I think is hilarious, by the way. But I don't know where there's a scenario where Nick Richards and Jimmy Butler come to the Phoenix Suns. And I got in a lot of hot water with that, because basically what I had said was, guys, they have 3 second-round picks and 1 first-round pick. We have already talked about this team potentially not being able to get Jimmy Butler because they don't have enough. And everyone has kind of told me as well with the Jimmy Butler thing, well, this Suns team, we got to be fair. I mean, the Miami Heat, they don't have any other offers on the table. You are not just being the only offer on the table that the Miami Heat might take for Jimmy Butler, but you have to be fair. You're also giving them a horrendous contract. The Bradley Beal contract doesn't just disappear because you hand them a couple of picks. You're asking them to not only hand you Jimmy Butler, but take over your garbage contract. It's going to cost more than a first-round pick to do that. It's going to cost all your picks. And that's if the Miami Heat see even that as fit. Because I understand the scenario for the Miami Heat that you just might want to hold on to Jimmy Butler till the end of the year, let him walk for nothing, because at least you have an absorbent amount of money that you will then get. So you will then get back for this Miami Heat team to use elsewhere. So barring a deal for trading Tyus Jones or trading Monte Morris and getting more picks and more things back into this team to help facilitate a trade for both guys, like, I'm with you. I hope the Suns get Nick Richards and they get Jimmy Butler. And I'll talk in a second of just how impactful those players will be. But, I mean, call it what it is, guys. We have to call it what it is. There's no way, with the assets the Suns have now, barring a trade for Tyus, Monte Morris, Grayson Allen, and getting more assets in, are you getting Nick Richards and Jimmy Butler? And I had a lot of people tell me those two things aren't related. No, they are. And I wish I had this hopeless optimism about the Phoenix Suns that everything is always going to be gravy and great, but I hate to break it to you, that's not the case. The Suns have a specific amount of resources to allocate. You're not just going to rub a magic genie, lamp and be able to get more picks and more assets to throw away. So I'm sticking by that opinion. Also, let's talk about the potential ad of, let's just call it Nick Richards, because I think people know where I stand with Jimmy Butler. Nick Richards is not going to change the trajectory of this team. He's a backup big on a not very good Charlotte Hornets team. That's another thing about Nick Richards that, like, yes, good player. He'd be the immediate starter on the Phoenix Suns. And it shows just how bad this Suns team is at the front court position, more particularly at the center position. I want to warn Suns fans that are pounding the table, that are begging for Nick Richards to come to the Suns team. He can't start on a bad Charlotte Hornets team. It's not to say he wouldn't be an upgrade or whatever the Suns have. Mason Plumlee is terrible. Yusuf Nurkic is terrible. The Suns' best center player is Oso Ighodaro, who's an undersized center, probably more suited as a 4, and he's a second-round player. Nick Richards isn't changing the trajectory of this team. He's not taking them from not a playoff team right now, as they currently sit, to a championship contender. He's just not doing that. But what I think Nick Richards can do is help elevate the floor of this team. Can he help take them from a playoff team or from a non-playoff team to a playoff team, a play-in team? Yeah, I could see that. That's how bad the center position has been. But this team is going to go as the big three goes. Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker are going to have to carry this team. Of course, it goes without saying that the role players have to be better and the rookies have to step up and Budenholzer has to make good adjustments. But this idea that they're going to go from a non-playoff team to a championship contender just because you really hope it happens, because they get Nick Richards, I think is just asininely bad to think. This team has to go as Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant go. It's not going to switch from a role players team. You already have developed an identity. Small ball and star players. It could work. And yes, adding players on this team does need to be obviously a necessity for this team and help elevate the floor, but call it what it is. Those players, Nick Richards, even a Grayson Allen, are not changing the trajectory of this team. Jimmy Butler could. He's a star player, and that helps fit your culture and what you are as an identity, but I want to temper the expectations a little bit of Nick Richards. He's clearly going to be better what the Suns have now. I mean, it can't be any worse. But Yusuf Nurkic and Oso Ighodaro and Mason Plumlee are not what's holding this team back. What's holding this team back is cohesion, chemistry, and I think a little bit of a better culture, a little bit more of a physical culture. So that's where I would sit with that. I just like to temper those expectations just a bit. All right. Let's jump into our final topic of the day. The NFL playoffs were over the weekend, and if you were living under a rock, you potentially didn't catch a lot of the action. And there was some interesting things. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I was going to come on here and talk about Kyler Murray on the Arizona Cardinals and basically say this. Listen, you might not like Kyler, and I'm still going to kind of roll with this a little bit. And you might not like the direction of Kyler. And Jonathan Gannon officially committed to Kyler Murray last week without any hesitation. He was asked on the flagship for the Arizona Cardinals, the sports radio show here in Phoenix. He was asked if Kyler Murray would be back next year. Jonathan Gannon said 100%. There was no ifs, no ands, no ers, no buts about what the Phoenix or what the Arizona Cardinals were going to do with Kyler Murray, and I enjoyed that. And to some of the anti-Kyler crowd who don't necessarily like this idea of Kyler Murray just coming back, no worries about it. And then you kind of look at, there's two ways you can kind of look at this weekend with Kyler Murray. You look at a player that everyone tries to tell you is a top 5 quarterback because he's bigger, stronger, not necessarily more athletic, but he's what your prototypical quarterback looks like in the NFL in Justin Herbert. Call it what it is. You feel better about Justin Herbert as a franchise quarterback over Kyler Murray because he's taller. Because at this point, Herbert, what is it, year 5? To year 5, year 4? It's almost kind of the argument that you have with Kyler Murray. He is what he is at this point. I understand he might need a little bit better weapons, but these consistent playoff performances are an asininely bad taste in the mouth of Justin Herbert fans. I mean, it's horrendous. Call it what it is. It's horrendous. Justin Herbert's 2 playoff games, he had a 27-7 lead and squandered it. He lost to what some people think is a bust in Trevor Lawrence. And then you have what transpired on Saturday. C.J. Stroud was not having a great second year. Now, a lot of that isn't his fault. The offensive line is horrendous, and he's missing a lot of his key players. But he got annihilated. And outside of a ridiculously long 86-yard touchdown, Justin Herbert was pretty hapless in that game. I mean, he was not good. And it kind of just goes to show you a lot of Kyler Murray prejudice. It does come from the fact that he's just a smaller guy. Justin Herbert had 1 touchdown, was kind of fluky, 86 yards, 4 interceptions, a QBR of 13, and a passer rating of 40. Everyone held it against Kyler Murray when he was god-awful against the Los Angeles Rams. We have to start holding Justin Herbert to that same notion or idea that for some reason people just think he's elite just because they want to feel like he's elite. And then it brings me to this. There are, consistently as well, just you feel better. I guess I should say it like this. There are 2 arguments that kind of what I've went through. One is you feel better about Justin Herbert than you do Kyler Murray just because he's bigger and he's stronger. Outside of that, there is no other distinction that Justin Herbert is clearly better in the post-Thanksgiving in the playoffs than Kyler Murray at this point. And that should make you feel good if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan. The fact that Kyler Murray can still be talked about in the same conversation as Justin Herbert. And do I think you could still win a Super Bowl with Justin Herbert? Yes. Does that mean as well you can win a Super Bowl with Kyler Murray? Yes. With the same circumstances that we talked about on Friday. You got to be able to load up this team. So there is a scenario where this team can succeed. It just has to be by loading up this team. But then there's another thing. There's the other argument to what we saw this past weekend. And it goes against people like me. But I have to be honest, it is what it is. I have been adamantly, vehemently against Cliff Kingsbury. And I will not move from that argument. He was a horrendous head coach. Wherever he would go, he would be a horrendous head coach. He's a beta male. He doesn't know how to command a team. Leadership. There is no specific team you can point to or organization you can point to with Cliff Kingsbury where they had success. Outside of the 1 year they made the playoffs with the Cardinals, and if you were paying attention, they were spiraling at that point. But I got to be fair. Him and Jaden Daniels, that win last night, it supports the anti-Kyler crowd, and it goes against the pro-Kyler crowd. Now, there is absolutely no argument at this point that Kyler Murray is a better option for this Arizona Cardinals team than not. There's no other better options right now. And Jaden Daniels last night going 24 for 35, 2 touchdowns, QBR of 80, and a passer rating of 110 with Austin Eckler, De'Ami Brown, and Terry McLaurin as his leading receivers. It just goes to show you in this league, you either have it or you don't. Kyler Murray, this idea that he could ever be a top 6 quarterback in the NFL, unfortunately for me, is dead. It doesn't mean he can't ever be a top 10, a top 8 quarterback, but the ceiling that I had for him, that he can be a top 6 guy, like that's dead. And that goes with watching Jaden Daniels. We're in year 7 next year of Kyler Murray, year 6 this year. You either have it or you don't. And Jaden Daniels has it. He was electric last night. He carried this Commanders team to their first playoff win in God knows how long. I think they might have won one with Kirk Cousins. And seeing that fan base at the opposing team's field, it was louder when the Commanders scored than when the Buccaneers scored. And yes, in the chat, I can't pronounce your name, but it starts with an O. Yes, Cliff Kingsbury is a beta male. I won't stray away from that. But Jaden Daniels, he showed that whatever you're waiting for Kyler Murray, it's probably never coming, which kind of sucks. Because if you were like me, and for the first couple years of Kyler, you were all in, you were ecstatic, you were happy to be here. There's really just one way to win now with Kyler, and there's only one way to win a Super Bowl with Kyler, and that's with loading up this team. And that might be the same thing for Justin Herbert, and that might be the same thing for C.J. Stroud, and that might be the same thing for we're not sure if you're a Tier 2 or Tier 1 quarterback. But this idea that Kyler will ever be a Tier 1 guy, like when Mike Sando released his quarterback rankings at the beginning of every year, it's over. Barring something dramatically different, it is over. It'll be year 7 next year. You either have it or you don't. And Jaden Daniels, that guy has it. And I have never been more wrong. It's so funny. The 2 guys I was wrong about, just horrendously wrong about, and I have big opinions, and I have to admit when I'm wrong. That just happens sometimes. But 2 guys that I was wrong about, Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson. Couldn't have been more wrong about the 2 guys that basically play the exact same way. You think I would have learned the first time? I didn't. He is tremendous. He's fantastic. His ability to move in the pocket, throw with precise accuracy, and run the ball, it's all things that I thought Kyler Murray was going to be. But unfortunately for me, that is not the case. And we learned this weekend that Kyler can be a top 10 guy, top 8 guy, but this idea he'll ever be a Tier 1 player on his own without the same amount of great players that an opposing team has, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And it doesn't mean you should give up on it. It doesn't mean they shouldn't bring back Kyler next year. There are no other better options. But we did learn what the limitations are for one Kyler Murray. And while the Commanders are continuously pushing ahead in the playoffs, players like Justin Herbert are getting excuses made for him once again. And Kyler Murray sitting at home while the Los Angeles Rams, a division rival, play a home playoff game, in quotes, today in Kyler Murray's home stadium. So you learned some things that maybe you didn't like so much about Kyler, but other things that were encouraging between the Justin Herbert loss and the Jaden Daniels win. Some players have it. Some players don't. Some players are tier 1. Some players are tier 2. All right, guys. I got to move on to the second part of the day. There's a lot of things going on in the Ben Garcia show world that you guys might not know about, but I appreciate you guys joining with me at 6 a.m. this morning. We will do this again Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to about 6:30, 6:35 a.m. We'll continue to go through those conversations. Appreciate you guys being at the chat. King Nacho, Omni Diaz, can't even say your name, Michael Evans, Ivan, you guys have been awesome, good supporters of this channel. It's been 8 to like 12 of you guys in here watching, which is great numbers for me. Listen, we can only go up from here, so appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Don't forget to follow me on all social media platforms at Ben Garcia Show. And until next time, guys, I'm Benjamin Garcia, and Malachi as well in the chat. Good to see you as well. But I'm Benjamin Garcia. Until tomorrow at 6 a.m., it's been the Ben Garcia Show.